Varmt välkommen till Aktiespararna och Digitala Aktiekvällen. And now I will switch to English. We will now have a presentation of the company Aegirbio. Viewers cannot ask questions to the company live in the program, but the questions will be gathered and submitted to the company after this program. And presenter is the company's CEO, Bradley Messmer. My name is Lars Hawkinson and I'm the moderator. So, please Bradley, go ahead and show your presentation for us.
Okay, well, thank you again for the invitation to present here, and it's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to tell you and your viewers about Aegirbio. So this is the agenda for my presentation, and let me start by saying we're currently in a subscription process for a new rights issue, and many details of what I'm going to discuss are described more thoroughly in the prospectus. So I'm going to try to keep this presentation focused on the big picture and the broad themes of who we are and what we hope to achieve. I'll walk through our technology platforms and business models, including some really exciting new initiatives, and also describe the details and rationale for our current financing. As I go through the presentation, I may use a few abbreviations, most notably POC, which stands for point of care, meaning medical tests that are performed near patient, often in clinics, and also PON, or point of need, which is now really anything outside of a clinic, including home testing. And as a reminder to those that are familiar with the company, we began with two core technologies: the Veritope platform that creates unique biochemistry for measuring biologic drug levels, and the Magnia Reader, which is a magnetic lateral flow platform that has some really fascinating features, particularly in a world that's now very familiar with lateral flow, and I'll tell you more about that. So I'd like to start by stating our mission and our values. Aegirbio's mission is to create products that empower people to understand and improve their unique health status. Now, we often use words like personalized or precision medicine, but at the heart of what we do is a recognition that every individual has a unique biology, and that understanding and properly treating requires convenient, user-friendly tools to track that variability. So to realize this mission, we adhere to three core values. The first is based on really where we come from, and I'm a scientist by training, so we always have to get the science right. We need to keep informed stakeholders, which include external stakeholders such as our customers, patients, their physicians, and also internal stakeholders, which includes obviously our shareholders, our employees, and our business partners. And we need to continuously emphasize that we must act with integrity and professionalism, again, both internally and when dealing with external partners, and make sure that our partners live up to these values as well. So if you followed our company, you know we've had a tumultuous year with several unfortunate situations caused in large part by partners that did not deliver as we expected. So I'm confident that we fix those problems and put them in the past, and that a recommitment to these values will keep us on the right path. Now, Aegirbio is an international company with sites in the US, the United Kingdom, and Finland, in addition to our home base in Lund. I'm currently based in San Diego in the US, but I spend a lot of my time in Europe with each of the teams. And I'd like to say it was a unique challenge to knit together this group, particularly during the pandemic. I mean, we really formed and got started seriously, almost synchronous with the pandemic. And I'm very proud of the efforts that's been made by all of our employees and the various teams to integrate and align with the Aegirbio mission. So the team is led by myself and Patrick Elfwing, who's our COO. We have an interim CEO that we recently brought on board, Patrick Gotthard. We're looking for a full-time CFO going forward. Leslie Page has been with me predating Aegirbio. She heads our research in San Diego. Vasi Frakow heads our development team in the United Kingdom. Mika Leitinen heads the technology team in Finland, and Ella Hoysten is responsible for overall corporate strategy as well as the operations in the US. So there's been some changes at the top, but I'm particularly gratified that the rest of the team has stuck together through the last 18 months or more. And I think it really speaks to the compelling nature of our mission that these talented individuals continue to work with us and believe in the goals of the company. So the team is, of course, supported by the board, which includes myself as a co-founder. Our chairman of the board is a fellow co-founder, Anders Ingvarson. He's also a very experienced veteran life sciences executive. Frederick Haglund was with one of the parent companies, Life Assays, previously, so he has a deep knowledge of the company, the technology, and the mission. And Seppo McKinnon is an experienced leader and former venture capitalist investor, focused mainly in life sciences and diagnostics in Europe and elsewhere. So Aegirbio was formed in 2019 as a joint venture between Life Assays and my previous company, Aegirbio Biosciences, which I had founded 8 years prior. So 2 years ago, we listed on the NASDAQ First North Growth market and soon thereafter acquired ViruSpect and Viralytics. Viralytics brought a point-of-care electrochemical platform that complements the Magnia Reader platform we already had from MagnaSense. And ViruSpect broadened our expertise in lateral flow technology and specifically brought expertise for COVID antigen tests, which was very timely. In 2021, we merged and acquired or acquired the two parent companies to fully integrate the business and all align all the teams on the Aegirbio mission. Through ViruSpect, we also launched one of the first saliva-based COVID antigen rapid tests, initially for the professional use market. Now, again, if you followed our history, you know that we had some unfortunate choices in distribution partners that led to the consequence that we didn't realize the sales that we really thought were possible there. And that has been, a disappointment. But in the meantime, we've persevered, and we recently got CE home approval for the saliva test, meaning we can now sell direct to consumer or into consumer or non-professional markets. This is the whole COVID experience, and particularly COVID testing, has been very dynamic and a very fluid market. It's in a downturn now, but there's every reason to believe it may come back. And there are still niches that I think we have significant opportunities to penetrate. And recently and excitingly, we have CE marked our first 2 point-of-care tests for therapeutic drug monitoring, which is a major milestone for the company, since this was the original vision before COVID turned everything sort of sideways. And I'll speak more about this in a moment. So to review the technology quickly, Aegirbio was really founded on 2 core technology platforms. So at Aegirbio Biosciences, we had developed the Verito platform, which consists of mimetope peptides that are used as sensors to measure biologic drugs, with the goal to precisely dose these expensive and powerful medicines by measuring the dose and adjusting based on an individual patient's drug clearance. But of course, biochemistry alone isn't a measurement. We needed a sensor mechanism. And so we were very excited to partner with Life Assays and the MagnaSense technology that came with it. As I mentioned, this is a magnetic-based lateral flow technology. I think we've all become familiar with lateral flow with COVID tests, and the off-the-shelf technology is great if you need a yes/no. But when you want to go quantitative and actually measure things accurately, magnetics is really sort of the next generation implementation of lateral flow. And so these 2 technologies together and all the know-how that goes with it is a really powerful combination. Now, of course, there are other applications that aren't amenable to this type of immunoassay lateral flow, and that's where the Viralytics platform comes into play. This is an electrochemical platform that does detection through a different modality, and the initial focus was on markers related to thyroid disease, but the potential applications are in fact much broader. And I'll say that we continue to evaluate other technical components that can round out sort of our toolbox as we think about the bigger portfolio that we want to build. And along that path, as I mentioned, we launched one of the first saliva-based COVID antigen tests. And during that development and the development of the VirusSpec product, on the research side, we started to look a little more into saliva, which as a scientist, I had always been told was a very unfriendly substance. But the more we dove into it and started working with it, we realized that there was a lot of potential there. And in particular, as we were thinking about home testing, the need for simple sample collection and processing was very much on front of mind. As anyone who has struggled with an at-home COVID test, open the box when their kid comes home from school and get a large instruction sheet with multiple steps and little vials and drops and a swab that goes up the nose, we felt like there had to be a better way. And so we asked ourselves, could we use our technologies to make tests that were as easy as brushing your teeth? And the answer, we believe, and visualized here, is yes. And it's really the unique capabilities of our technology platforms that make this possible. And so we are progressing rapidly towards engineering proof of concept in this direction. And I want to say just a little bit of science, which is that the foundation for this vision is the recognition and demonstration that we can measure biomarkers in saliva with the same accuracy as in blood using a patent pending calibration method we developed. There's always a little bit of blood in saliva, and we've developed this technology to determine how much blood is in a given sample so that it can be accurately quantitated. So we have robust data demonstrating that it works. This is an excerpt from a manuscript we're preparing, showing a very good correlation between saliva and serum-based measurements. And there's actually a growing body of scientific literature supporting the use and validity of saliva as a test matrix for blood-based markers. Now, this initial work and what you're seeing here was done with measuring antibodies against COVID provoked by either vaccination or prior infection. And we actually think that that's an interesting market opportunity in its own right, but the potential is much broader. And we have preliminary data showing that we can measure biologic drugs in saliva samples. And we've in fact prepared a proof of concept study that'll begin in the fall to really demonstrate that potential. So in short, we continue to pursue the different market segments that our current products and our blood-based products can address. But I think the really exciting big picture here is that most, if not all of them, could converge into a simple saliva-based platform. And non-invasive sampling with saliva is not just a convenience, but it enables more routine monitoring and thus opens new potential markets in wellness and e-health. In many biomarker spaces, the problem is not making the measurement, it's making the measurement often enough to detect a change, and this could really enable that. So I look forward to keeping everyone updated as we make progress on this exciting endeavor. Now, I don't have time to go through all of our products and their business case, and much of the detail can be found in our prospectus and on other sources. But I'd like to quickly walk through the case for therapeutic drug monitoring because it's really core to what we do. Now, I'll say we started working on this years ago with monitoring of the drug Tysabri, which is used to manage multiple sclerosis. It's a great drug, but it also comes with a serious side effect risk of PML, which is a brain infection that can be deadly. And one of our early collaborators, Dr. John Foley, was really a pioneer in recognizing that the one-dose-fits-all approach that's used with Tysabri was probably not the best, and that many patients probably were getting too much drug and had an elevated risk of PML. And he had encountered that exact phenomenon in his practice, and he wanted this tool to measure drug levels and adjust dosing. But what's important to understand is this is not just Tysabri. This actually goes for the entire class of biologic drugs. What's remarkably consistent across this class of drugs is the variability in how different people's bodies eliminate the drugs, such that drug levels vary 100-fold when you look across different patients. And that has the outcome that estimates are up to a half of patients are either overtreated or undertreated. Of course, anything that gives side effect or a poor response to therapy is a problem for the patient, but it's also a huge health economic problem because these are some of the most expensive drugs used today. so there's multiple reasons why getting the dose right is really important. Otherwise, the long-term costs of these drugs to the patient and the health systems is really tremendous. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we've just CE marked our first 2 point-of-care tests for Tysabri and Remicade. And we are ready now for clinical introduction and validation. So we're taking a measured approach to product launch, in which market entry will have an initial emphasis on validation studies with key opinion leaders in the space, because it's essential to build that credibility and develop the real world evidence that this test adds value, even though we know from all the science coming that it will. And of course, we have an extensive pipeline ready to follow. All of these veritopes have been developed. They can be transferred onto the Magnia platform very quickly. But we want to initially focus on getting those first 2 launches right. But you can see collectively, this is a very significant market opportunity. Now, to support all of these activities, we are raising money through a rights issue with preference to existing shareholders. The subscription period is open now, and the terms are shown here broadly and, of course, described in more details in the prospectus, which you can get from our website. This issue is 80% guaranteed, so we're confident that we'll have the resources needed to execute the business plan, and additional resources will become available if the TO2 warrant series are fully exercised. So broadly speaking, we're going to continue to invest in the R&D and commit the resources needed for both our residual sales efforts around COVID testing and launching of the TDM products and potential lab tests in the US if those are viable. But we're also going to make additional investments in our business and corporate development efforts and seek partners, particularly on the business development side, look for partners for the various opportunities we have that don't fall along the critical path. We're still a small company, and focus is a priority. With that said, we of course will remain on the lookout for other partnering and M&A opportunities. And this is an area where I think we really suffered during the pandemic, particularly in the beginning when travel wasn't possible. We always wanted to do more of this than we could at the time, but now is the right time for a reinvestment in this area. So in summary, I think Aegirbio is back on track to become a world leader in empowering people to take control of their health. We have a great set of tools, we have a great set of talent, and our team has been through a rough go of it and come out stronger, more well integrated, and more committed than ever to fulfilling our mission and potential. So thank you, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Bradley, for an exciting presentation. I would start to ask you a question about the company, and it's been pretty stormy around the company over the last year. And what is your opinion about what has happened?
Yeah, so it was definitely a bit of a rough ride. And, I think what happened, as I mentioned, is that there was such an enormous opportunity with COVID and an enormous need. And so we couldn't help but take advantage of the possibility to create, these saliva-based tests and make a positive contribution when there was such a worldwide need. But I think the flip side of that was things were moving so quickly and the markets were fluid and opportunities came and went, and we maybe jumped a little prematurely into relationships that in retrospect we shouldn't have. So as I look back, every decision we made seemed like the right thing at the time, but without the full lay of the land as things were shifting, we made some missteps, and I think that's an important lesson that we've internalized.
Okay, what steps have you taken or will take to kind of try to restore market confidence for the company?
Well, I think at the core, all we can do is do our best and be transparent about it. So that's why I think that statement of values is so critical. Obviously we've come under a lot of scrutiny and have had to be very careful in what we publicly say and not repeat any perceived mistakes of the past. But I think, with this presentation and with the rights issue, we've laid out very clearly who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why we think it's really important and exciting.
Are there any legal disputes of a larger nature that the company or the company's representatives are now involved in?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. What about, will you comment on that your CFO resigned in February? Do you have any comment on that?
Not much, just to say that, Christian came on board or was originally recruited when we were on a very different trajectory. And so I think when he arrived, the company was very different than what the situation he thought he was coming into. And I have to say, he did absolutely wonderful work for us. It was a pleasure getting to know him. We wish him well. And, but at the end of the day, we're still a small focused team, and we need everyone involved to be 100% committed to the mission and enjoy working with the team.
As one of your slides showed, you now have an ongoing issue. What will the money be used for? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, as I said, it's going to, number one, support the R&D. And with this convergence around saliva testing, we really feel that that's such an opportunity that it's worth substantial investment. And as I said, the other area that I think is a little bit new, although not entirely, but is a better emphasis on business development. As a company, we've always had that gift and curse that we can do a lot of things, and so we have to be focused on what we are doing. But that also means we have a lot of things that other people could do with us, where we just shouldn't be doing the heavy lifting. So I think the partnership opportunities are really a major emphasis going forward.
Okay, thank you. What costs does the company have for this ongoing issue?
It's about 20% of the raise, which is, more than we would like, of course. But, you have to acknowledge the reality that this is a very difficult investment climate, made worse by events in Europe, but even globally, money is getting harder and harder to come by. And so we recognize that there's a risk premium right now for investors to come into anything. And so we acknowledge that reality, and we'll do the best we can.
Thank you. You received 2 point-of-care tests recently CE marked. What does that mean for the company, and when can sales get started on this?
I mean, in principle, sales could begin right away, but there's more to launching a diagnostic product, particularly for something as important as therapeutic drug monitoring. It's not something you want to rush. And like I mentioned, building the credibility through close collaborations and partnership studies with key opinion leaders is absolutely essential to do that. And so we're well on the way towards that. And the other sort of global challenge that we face is that short-term profit is, of course, important and what we want, but we see a larger picture. So getting things right in terms of patient adoption and demonstrating the fundamental value of our technology and science pays dividends down the road.
Okay, Bradley, tell me more about how your products are sold or will be sold.
I think it'll depend a little bit on each market. To the extent that we can, we want to be the driving force on the commercialization. Again, a hard lesson learned, and one that we're pursuing with respect. But with that said, we can potentially operate in so many different disease spaces and laboratory or clinical settings that some of those may make more sense to go through distributors or people that have existing connections or sales channels into those markets.
Okay, what are your most important markets?
So I think the TDM is the most important market from a sort of foundational perspective. I mean, that's what we began with, and it's what I'll call sort of a hard science application for our somewhat simple technology. And if we can do that, we can do anything. It's a little obnoxious, but if we can pull that one off, then I think we've really demonstrated that our technology is good, and I'm confident that we will. But then that opens up this whole world, I think, of at-home testing. And with non-invasive saliva-based testing, I think we could really revolutionize a lot of how we think about monitoring tests.
Are there any products on the market today that are similar to your products?
Yeah, there's a number of lab tests that are available for therapeutic drug monitoring, and we've tried that approach as well and understand its limitations. So in the TDM space, we think we're really the leader for the point of care application. More broadly, obviously, there's lots of COVID tests. There are some other saliva-based tests, and there's a few other saliva-based testing companies. But they've sort of focused on different applications than I think the ones we're contemplating. And of course, the convergence of saliva testing with therapeutic drug monitoring, I think, is really unique to us.
What do you think are the company's biggest risks and opportunities within the next year?
Well, I think there's the overall risk that we all share in terms of the market and the risks of geopolitical situations, obviously including Ukraine and supply chain issues. But we're maybe less exposed to some of those. Once we raise the money we need to raise. I think the opportunities are really enormous, and in some ways, our biggest risk is that we get distracted by trying to do too much. And so that's a question we are always asking ourselves is, what's along the critical path, and make sure that we put 90% of our efforts on the things that are really make or break, even if they have multiple steps.
Okay, so sometimes you say to your colleagues, we have to slow down a little bit. Or
well, never slow down per se, but be careful. And make good decisions, and not be afraid, though, to sometimes pause something that is not clearly on the critical path. Again, one of the hardest things as a scientist to do is to not do the interesting experiment. But as a business, sometimes you have to walk away from things that are interesting but are maybe not as essential to the business.
Okay, my last question will be, where do you hope the company will be somewhere in its growth in 3 years from now?
So I think in 3 years, we will have rounded out our initial product portfolio as described, and I hope that we will be well into that convergence that I've described with the saliva-based testing platform. I think that can integrate all the strengths of our company into a truly unique package that can then open up a whole world of consumer-based products, as well as improve everything we're trying to do with, let's say, clinical testing as well.
Well, thank you, Bradley, for your presentation, and good luck in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.